Monday mornings with Matt and Kevin. What's in the news? Topics that come up around the dinner table will be given the truth treatment with no punches held and no falsehood left standing. These two will debate real-life issues from a Catholic perspective every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern.
And now, here are your hosts, Matt and Kevin.
Well, we are back for a Monday morning. Matt is here. Well, I'm Kevin. I'm here as well. And it's nice. We've been on a streak. We're back from illnesses over the winter. We've been here together a couple weeks in a row. We were just saying before the show how it feels like we just did this, and it does. This Lent, it's going pretty quick. I don't know if that means that I'm doing a good job or a bad job. Maybe I'm not doing it well enough. I'm not actually sure, but I think usually that the middle couple of weeks are about the toughest. So I'm expecting the next 2 weeks to be pretty tough. And well, again, you kind of want it to be at least kind of tough. I mean, it's got to be hard enough, but you don't want it to be too hard. But you want it to hurt a little bit. So no, I guess we'll see. Matt, what was going to happen. And today we're going to talk about we didn't plan the show at all, as people probably will find out. So we're going to we got a couple ideas like right before the show, like an hour before the show. Hey, we could talk about this. so that's what we're going to do. That's how we roll. But we'll do our best to make it interesting. Matt and I are just too busy, I guess, I don't know, lenting it up, living lives over here. But before we get into that, we do want to tell everyone again that we're not experts. We're not, well, I guess we're pundits. I mean, political pundits can be whatever. But if we say anything that comes into the religious, liturgical, faith, morals, all those things, we are not priests. We're not moral theologians. We're just two guys expressing our opinions. So please, please, please don't give us too hard of a time. Matt, how you doing?
Please don't put us out there in headlines again. We don't need that. We don't need that. No, I'm doing well. I was thinking, Twitter has been very quiet, and I know a lot of people are kind of gone for Lent, and that has kind of softened things up a bit, and you kind of realize like, oh, I haven't seen this guy, or you realize that a lot of people really have left. But I just feel like overall, even before people left for Lent, that Twitter has really relaxed a lot. I remember, man, like a year ago or so, like there was just constant bickering and going back and forth, and even a lot of clergy really taking the time to be on there and dispute their points. And I feel like that's kind of really chilled out a little bit as time has gone by. I don't know if the platform is changing or what, but just something that I kind of picked up on as I was spending some time scrolling yesterday. And I think too, I know what you were just saying before. I told you before the show started, we're flipping our calendars this week to March, and Good Friday's in March. It's at the end of March, and we were just flying through. And as you said, I feel like it did get off to a very quick start, but I feel like maybe as the weeks kind of go on, it'll be like a little bit, you'll feel it a little bit more, a little bit heavier, which is a good thing, as you said, but really just kind of a good time too. And I thought of this when I was saying my rosary earlier, was just that, the resolutions that I made or the things that I want to accomplish during Lent, how am I doing with them? Am I doing well with them? Am I, how am I feeling being void of the things that I gave up? And just kind of a little self-reflection to kind of see where I'm at. And, it made me think as I was kind of reflecting on my own self, just again, like we've talked about this on the show many times, but the extreme that like all the saints went through and sacrifice and penance and lived this sort of life. And a video came up online of people who were born in the 1700s, and as a result, they lived old enough to be around for when the first camera came out, so the photographs were taken. And people were commenting like, think about living in a time where if you had a headache, you had a headache. There was no, you don't just pop a pill. You had to go to the bathroom. It was handled different ways. The way society has coddled to us in so many ways. Like, man, it just really tied in together with me with penance and the way people used to live. Like, how does somebody like that who didn't know when their next meal was coming, in a lot of ways, probably, were very tired, they had to work all day, probably from sunrise to sunset. They were out in the field working, didn't have any pain medication. They had no sort of recreation. What kind of penance do you do? I was really reflecting on that. What else is there to give up? Life is suffering anyway. We really, and then we complain about not drinking, I don't know, whatever, Gatorade.
Well, and their fast rules back before Pius X were really strict. So. I mean, or even Sundays. Heck, I mean, on Sundays it was a water fast. You couldn't have anything to
Mm.
eat or drink besides water at all from midnight until after mass, obviously. And so that's something that's definitely lightened a lot. It used to be that I think it was almost a vegan diet. You couldn't have meat at all. You couldn't have, geez, what was, I think I don't even know if you could have fish. At some point, the Lenten fast
Yeah.
was intense. It was like bread, butter, and vegetables, and that's what you ate. Intense, yeah, as you say.
Mhm.
Boy, they were tough, but I think that's the the sad state of the world, but the beauty of the church, that the church can change with the times, and in some ways, obviously. And so the church saw,
Yes.
okay, people are just getting softer. We don't have to like it. We're not saying it's good, but people right now could not handle that. And so
Right.
we have to make it so it's something that they can do. And we live coddled lives, so we probably have coddled Lents. But
Mm.
this is a really good point. And I see this often. I had to chastise someone in the comment section the other day on one of our videos, that people say, well, see what the church has done. They've gotten so liberal and weak. It's like, whoa, hold up. You don't say that kind of stuff. You don't, we don't judge, these decisions made by the church, because,
Right.
well, again, as we talk so often on the show, these are the church is being guided by the Holy Ghost. How confident do you feel that your opinions about Lent are being guided by the Holy Ghost? Not sure about it. So calm down.
I mean, the church can bind and loose. People forget that second term of
Yeah.
it too. The church can lift her penances. The church can soften her penances. The church does this. So people make all these comments. The church is, rigid and strict in X, Y, and Z. But the church also does relax, and it has, as you said, the authority to do so. And a lot of times you hear people say, "Well, I don't know if it should do that." Well, it doesn't matter if what you think if they should do or not. The church has as mother, she has the guidance of the Holy Ghost and that infallibility of her universal disciplines to give to her faithful what is good for them, and she knows obviously better than us. Don't think mother knows best, but
Well,
it's true. It's true.
If you want to do this crazy 1200s, from the 12th century diet, then do it. No one's stopping you. Go do it.
Yeah,
Go
I
do a
guess.
vegan diet. I'm not going to stop you. The church isn't going to stop you as long as it's safe. Then fine. That's the thing. It's like this again. Even the whole premise of the argument is kind of this, better than thou, and it kind of like, I'm better than thou with the church. Like, come on, guys. Anyway, no, it is interesting. See, Matt, it's funny. We always start off the show talking about Lent. It must be a little bit on our minds, I suppose, in these times. But no. It is, yeah. It's a good. It should be. It should be, absolutely. But we wanted to talk a bit today about not necessarily politics. We'll start talking about politics, but we wanted to do a bit of a thought experiment, I suppose.
Hmm.
And we've had very little time to prepare for this, guys. So Matt and I are not really politicians, so give us a little bit of a break. But the question was, so we're looking at a little bit of stories going around. We've talked about Javier Milei in Argentina lately. We've talked about Putin.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've talked about Biden. And now there's, he's been around for a while now, the El Salvadorian president, Nayib Bukele. He's done a lot of good stuff. He's thrown pretty much all of their criminals in prison. Their economy is doing great. They have Bitcoin, I think is their primary exchange, or whatever you want to call it. And they're doing really well. And it's interesting to see this. You see this across the world. You see it in Hungary. You see it to an extent in Russia, not completely, but you see some countries that seem to be getting it right more than others. Germany ain't, in many ways, and the U.S. isn't, and it's going to get worse and worse because of the systems that are being run. And so I guess the ultimate question that we want to talk about is, if you and I were the presidents of the U.S. or Germany, what would we do? How would we run the country?
Well, one of the things that I've kind of gone back and forth on over the years too, is there was a time where I was very, very, very involved in politics, and I considered myself at one point a very strict, like, constitutionalist, and I really believed at the time in a very limited federal government, and believe it or not, the way the Constitution is written, the powers of the president are very limited.
Yeah.
Much of it is left to the states. Much of it is left to, whatever's not, the man, I used to know these things off the top of my head. And now I'm kind of, I'm starting to lose it. But I believe it's the 10th Amendment says that whatever power is not delegated to the federal government, and the amendments is delegated to the states, or the enumerated powers of the Constitution. So the presidential powers are really limited. So when you think about something like abortion, right? If you were to think about it constitutionally, there are a lot of people, I'm not saying this is my opinion or I agree, but there are a lot of people who say that the way our government is set up, a true conservative would say that abortion's a state issue because abortion is not mentioned in the Constitution whatsoever. Some people will start invoking other parts of the Constitution, but they look back at the point that the term itself is not mentioned. The same thing with marriage, right? When we had the whole DOMA thing, Defense of Marriage Act, there were a lot of conservatives who said, I agree with it. I think that marriage should be defended as the union of one man and one woman at a national level, but there's nothing in the Constitution that says the federal or any power here has the federal right over marriage. Marriage is a state issue. So I think that's something that and we kind of touched on this too when Taylor Marshall was considering his presidential run. The powers of the president truly are restricted if you want to be a constitutionalist. And how do you balance that with laws that should be enforced for the common good from natural law too, right? I mean, it's quite obvious things like marriage or things like abortion. These are things that you would think just normally that the president as commander in chief and as leader of the country should be able to just implement and enforce, but a lot of laws block that. And so I think too, you hear all these people campaign on these things, especially talking about campaign, Trump, Nikki Haley got slaughtered in her state the other day. You think about what are the powers that the president really has and what is he able to do? And I think that when we were kind of talking about religious liberty and whatnot in one episode, it's important to mention that you don't want to cause upheaval either, right? You don't want to cause civil unrest by all of a sudden some dictator coming in and implementing Catholicism and whatnot, because they would be able to do the same thing with any other religion. And I think we would have to be careful there. But, in a good way, in a natural way, everything that is govern our land naturally should reflect divine law, and we should honor Christ as king. And I think that is one thing that should be the root of and the popes have taught this, the documents and encyclicals have taught this, that Christ is truly king, and it should be reflected in our society, and that's what should come of a presidency that is right and just and in line with God's will. But I think too that balance of what kind of authority would I really have, as president, if I want to be a true quote unquote conservative. And I hate that term to it. What have conservatives done? I don't know. I'm going to go off on a totally different tangent, but do you see my point, Kev? Do you see like how I think it was Ron Paul really made a lot of good points with that. And I think he was popular amongst that libertarian base some time ago, was just because he recognized the limits of the federal government. A lot are state issues when you look at it. So would you govern that way? Would you really say, you know what, I don't have much power here. The authorities in article might be Article 1 of the Constitution or 2.
Well, I mean,
the states have their own
I'm
right.
much more of a monarchist, I suppose. I'd much rather. I think democracy is very, very deeply flawed because it gives you this idea of having a vote and having a say, when really it's kind of either a Hegelian dialectic or it's just yeah, you can vote in this or this, but the choices aren't really that real. And then when you think they are, the vote goes through every different layer. So I totally agree with you that every government should be smaller. I think that's true. I mean, the U.S. is just simply too big. I think Germany is already big enough. That's like, yeah, having one ruler for that, or having, that's already kind of too big. So maybe that needs to be split up into 10. But the U.S. is way too big. The fact that you're saying that one federal government, one person, the president is just governing over the entire country, it just literally doesn't make sense. They can't know what's actually going on.
Especially when America is so diverse and so really just the demographics of it and the geography of it too is crazy. And this was a thing with COVID. And I might, now that I'm speaking about this, I might have mentioned it on the show before, but I remember when these COVID lockdowns were happening, and they were seeking this national implementation of all these restrictions and 6 feet apart and all that. And one man who lived, I think, on a farm in Montana, or he was like my next door neighbor is about 10 miles from me. I don't need the restrictions of New York City. I'm in open, fresh air. I don't see people. I don't see buildings. I don't see companies. I am on a large farm where there's nothing from me. I have to drive 5, 10, whatever miles. America is very different that way, and that was part of the thought process of, if I don't like California, I can move to Texas. If I don't like Texas, I can move to Maine. You had that state's that state power of things. But you're right, it's very difficult to govern. And I don't know, is do you see out there in Europe, is it similar to that, where like you've got even just looking at the elections that we've gone through, South Carolina is a extremely conservative electorate, whereas New Hampshire is a pretty moderate / liberal electorate. Do you see that kind of difference based on location out there?
Oh yeah, even in Germany, I don't know that much about German politics, but the funny thing is that I know for a fact that the states in Germany that used to be part of the Eastern Bloc, so part of the communist side of Germany, are now extremely conservative. So they're the most conservative parties. They're the ones who vote in the AfD, which is by your normal person in the southwest of Germany considers them to be Nazis, because, well, anyone who's bad or disagrees with you is a Nazi. And so it's interesting that you do have different states voting differently. Bavaria is supposedly the Texas of Germany, but even Bavaria, it's still pretty liberal. I mean, compared, Germany is, I think you'd be surprised how much more liberal it is in its culture than the U.S. I mean, it's just much more social, and some things in a much better way. I think Germany does some things way better, but obviously other things not. And so I think it's a tough question, but I think you can generalize and say, when you get a government that is just trying to control people too far away, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. And you see that right now with the EU, you see it with the UN, you see it with all these different people who aren't even voted in, and they're trying to control people who live thousands of kilometers away. I try to tell me that makes sense. It just doesn't. And so I mean, if you're saying so, if, as you say with abortion, I suppose it's a good example. So if you're living in a state that's pro-abortion and you say, okay, yeah, then I don't feel like I can contribute to the state. I don't want to put my money into this. I don't want to live here. I'm going to move to a pro-life state. So you move to the pro-life state, and then you help that economy. You become a patriot for that state. That makes a lot more sense. So I mean, the smaller that can be, the better. And I think the more it's federalized, absolutely the worse, because then you have all these stupid issues where, okay, if it's passed into law by so and so, and then it's signed on by the president and by the Supreme Court, then it's codified, and it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, so does that mean just because one government, one set of Supreme Court justices determined one thing, that's it?
Well, that's what was interesting. That's what was interesting. I remember back then with DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act in California. I believe that got put to vote constantly. It got put to vote. It failed. It got put to vote. It failed. It failed. It failed. It failed. It failed. It failed. Then it passed, and everybody's like, "That's it. It's settled." It's all of a sudden it's settled. Well, why weren't the 10 negative votes that were against it? Why didn't that settle it? But for some reason, that one vote that passed it, all of a sudden, that's it. It's set in stone. And you hear some of these terms too. One of the things that was talked about during election cycles is, we're going to codify Roe v. Wade. We're going to set it in stone. We're going to make it really the law of the land, and enshrine it into the amendments. But one of the things too that people don't realize is, in order to add an amendment to the Constitution, you need 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and 3/4 of the states in order to get an amendment into the Constitution. You don't just that's the only way, in my opinion, that the Constitution lives and breathes, is through the amendment process. The language in it is set. And I think, like you have this centralized, they call it inside the Beltway, right? When you're governing inside DC, and then people in Alaska are bound by the same laws. It is kind of strange. I do agree. I don't know what's best for the future, and I feel like, even looking at electoral maps, right? The votes have changed. There was a time where California was consistently red. Now it's consistently blue. Texas has been, very safe red for however long now, and I think there are some indications that Texas might be more purple as of late. So you just think how demographics change, and how cultures change, and how people change, and laws have changed. And I think really something that changed that was I don't know if I mentioned it before, but Ronald Reagan's Amnesty Act of '84, just granting citizenship to all these illegal immigrants, whatever. It changed the landscape of America permanently. And I think that that's something that needs to be considered, is how do you we just said, how do you govern an entire country that is so different and so diverse from one main leader who's really limited in power? It's a strange system because unlike Germany, where everyone should be anyway, German, or even Russia, thinking back to what the Russian Empire, to the Soviet Union, now to Russia, where everyone has that commonality of ethnicity. America is very different from that. And it's difficult, and these people like the monarchs. I think of England, Queen Elizabeth was a unifying figure. All British people had her as the unifier, right? It doesn't work that way with presidents. I don't know. It's a very complex system, and I do think that people say why, whether we vote for Obama, Bush, Reagan, Clinton, why is it always the same thing? Well, I think in the end it's because that there are much higher powers than that really run things. And I don't know.
Well, if you could, let's just say somehow you get elected, and you can have any amount of power, like this guy in
just unlimited
ukulele, whatever.
I don't like what Mussolini kind of did in a lot of ways.
Right. Let's just say you have that power. What do you think? I mean, would you? Because like this guy down in El Salvador, it was the highest crime rated country in the world, I think, or top 3 for sure. Back, I think, 6 years ago, and he got in, and he literally just went and got all the M3. What are the guys?
Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13.
MS-13. Thank you. So they went and he just rounded them up and put them in like concentration camps, pretty much. I mean, they just put them in these huge camps, and it was like, hey, look, if you have anything to do with them, you're going to prison. Done. End of story. No trial, anything. At least as far as
what FDR did with Japanese people.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but that's as far as I understand it. It's just like, okay, anyone, you can tell me in the comments, but I haven't looked that much into this guy, but that's what I've heard. But they cleaned up the streets, and these guys are evil dudes. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But you also take out, you kind of take out law and order. And I think, as I think maybe you mentioned, or maybe it was my brother the other day talking about St. Thomas More, talking about the movie, the Man for All Seasons, and how he says, if you tear down the laws, when you turn around, the devil will be there, and there'll be nothing to protect you because the law is gone. Have you seen that movie?
No.
That's one we can recommend, guys. Man for All Seasons. There's a little bit of language in it, but it really, Matt, you got to watch it. Fantastic movie. Man for All Seasons, highly recommended. Anyway, and he's a lawyer, obviously, so he's one of the greatest lawyers maybe of all time, St. Thomas More. And he's pretty much saying, okay, because one guy says, if I had the power, I'd cut away all the laws, and I'd say, do this, this, and this. He's like, okay, and then what? What happens when you cut, when you don't have law and order, then that's when it all gets turned on its head, kind of a thing. Because anarchy, even when it's at the moment turned for good, is a very dangerous idea. Because if you just say, I can just throw these guys in prison because they're bad, okay. And then what happens when the next president gets in and says, oh, yeah, well, you're Catholic, so I consider that to be a danger to, it's a dangerous idea. So I think law, it has its place in the world, I suppose.
That's what happened. I believe it was FDR did that with Japanese. He threw them in internment camps during World War II. And the Supreme Court, that's another funny thing, is I believe they were like, that's totally justified. We would be outraged. Imagine if it was a different race or whatever in this day and age. If that's the thing is if we were to say, all right, Joe Biden's going to round up all Italians and throw them into concentration camps, and then the Supreme Court says, like, yeah, he's totally justified in that with no reason, just by virtue of you being a certain race. That's exactly what FDR did. And
the Italians would still eat better than everybody else.
We so would. That's where we would invent a new food.
Food
that you haven't heard of yet.
Exactly. No, but it's a great point though, and that's the issue. You look at Lincoln during the war, and he did away with habeas corpus, which just said, hey, I just have the right to do whatever I want with anybody I want, and you get it. And if you have someone who is just, let's say if it's King St. Louis, and he did that, you'd be like, okay, yeah, okay. He's going to do good stuff with it. Of course he is. And maybe this guy, Bukele, is going to do good stuff. And maybe Javier Milei, maybe Trump. And then maybe not. Maybe Trump is the bad guy, like plenty of people tell us on Twitter all day long. And if he is the bad guy, then, okay, and if he does get this power somehow, or the power that people thinks he has, even though I agree with you, the president really does have a weird amount of power. Sometimes a lot and sometimes absolutely none. Very, very strange. It is a very strange system. But let's just say he does have the power that people think he could, and then he goes nuts. And then what? And then what? I mean, it's a dangerous idea, and I think it's an interesting lesson when you look at these guys in South America right now. That right now it's like, hey, yeah, this is going the way we want it, but it's a dangerous road. You got to be really careful down this kind of dictatorial path. It can work great, and it can go bad quick.
Speaking of Lincoln, though, did you see, was it earlier in the month when they ranked, why is this not letting me go? They ranked all 45 presidents of all time. Did you see this?
Google probably, yeah. No, I didn't see it.
No. Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh, here it is. Yeah, let me see if I can pull the actual list. So I think this is it right here. Let's see if this pulls it up. So they ranked the presidents. Now that Joe Biden's term he's in his last year, they were able to make the rankings, and this goes into the. I think.
Wait, sorry. Who's they? Who?
Oh, I don't know what they call it. It's the 2024 Presidential Greatness Project Expert Survey was conducted.
So Obama's number one, no question.
No.
Okay.
So this is the official list. Again, I don't know what historian does it. It was all over the news, so I just Googled it and I pulled up the first thing. So number one, the greatest president of all time is Abraham Lincoln.
Oh boy.
Now here's what's funny. F.D. Roosevelt was 2, Washington 3, Barack Obama number 7, the 7th greatest president of all time. Barack Obama number 12. Number 10, John Kennedy. Number 12, Bill Clinton. Number 14, Joe Biden.
14.
Number 14. It says, despite low poll numbers, Joe Biden is ranked one of the top presidents of all time, coming in at 14.
Why exactly? I'd love to hear the explanation for that one.
They actually, you can kind of dig a bit deeper into some reasoning, and they said the economy growth under Biden is just incredible. Ronald Reagan is 16, so Ronald Reagan falls behind Joe Biden. George H.W. Bush is 19 and 45. So 45 out of 45, the worst president of all time, Donald Trump.
Oh my!
Interesting.
Wait, who's 44? Who's 44? I want to.
44. Buchanan.
Oh, because he was the one who wasn't he the one who was he was a sexist or something, wasn't he?
I don't know.
Wasn't he the one who he wasn't married and he was really nasty with women or something? I think.
It could have been.
Don't take my word for that one again. Sorry.
But who would have thought that? I mean, just thinking, and again, I have my critiques of Reagan, but to put Biden ahead of Reagan.
Well, I mean, why would Biden go? I mean, come on, guys, come on.
He can't form a sentence.
Even if you worship the guy, and Obama, okay, you want to put Obama top 10 because of your ideologies? I can actually reasonably accept that because I get it. Biden hasn't done anything. He hasn't. The dude is a lunatic who has no brain. I mean, come on. And but the good thing, Matt, and you really see this through all politics. You see this, and Elon Musk has been a big help for this type of stuff. That people are starting to realize these people who do this, they can't help themselves. They have to go.
They have to do it. That's
what. They have to go too far. They have to put Trump last. They have to put Biden in the top 50.
Haley McNerney
hasn't done anything.
If you remember Haley McNerney, I think she was the press secretary, the last one under Trump. Yeah, right. She was on CNN. And they asked her about it, and she just smiled. I don't even think she responded to it. But the University of Houston, Vaughn from Coastal South Carolina University considered responses from 154 scholars and experts and historians who generated the list. Wow.
Boy, it puts so much trust and hope in our education system, doesn't it, Man, I would love to learn history right now. That's just, come on. I mean, and it's really interesting because, I mean, FDR number 2. I mean, guys, what are we basing this on? I mean, okay, yeah, he led the country during war. He started the war. And he knew that it was going to be bombed. This is common knowledge now. They all knew that Pearl Harbor was going to be bombed. They wanted it to be bombed because they wanted to try to save the U.S. in whatever other reason, the military, industrial complex was just forming. I mean, oh man,
you could make your arguments against Trump, but 45 out of 40.
No, Woodrow Wilson.
That was just
Wilson is definitely the most evil, I think, of all time. I think he is.
They had to do it. You're right. They just had to do it. They just
Yeah.
had to do it.
Well,
Just
and I think
had to do
even
it.
your true Trump haters. Okay, not your true Trump haters. Let's take a step back from that. Your mid level Trump haters are probably at least kind of like, huh, yeah, okay, maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah, recency bias. Okay, we don't like him. He's mean. He said bad things. And they all think he's this. He's this felon. That's because that's what the media tells them. I mean, Germany.
Right.
You see it all the time. Germany publish. It's all they publish. Trump indicted. Trump's going to prison. Trump
Right.
the
Right.
criminal. Trump. And
Right.
it's like,
Right. It's
have
all
you
you hear.
actually? Have you heard what he's actually being indicted for? It's a joke. It's actually a joke. It's like it's something that most people when they hear it. And have you heard? It's actually an interesting topic. That now that they're indicting him for all this stuff with his properties in New York, you're having a lot of these investment companies and people who own buildings and property in New York leaving because they're like, okay, so you can just force someone to give you $340 million or whatever to $500 million because you don't like them. Bye. It's crazy, man. But again, I do think that your normal people, even your what do you call them? Your neutrals,
Yeah, like they're
what's
not
the
a
word
very
for it?
they don't have strong opinions on it. They're
Yeah,
kind of just
but they're
they
starting
kind
to
of
say, okay,
just
this is weird. This is too much. Come on, this is too much. It's
yeah.
too much. They're overstepping.
I was reading too just just some things and there were people who did say that. Just some comments you could find some people's reactions and there were people who did say things like I disagree with a lot of his policies and some of the things that he said and done, but last, wow. Just kind of scrolling through here, just every modern Republican president has dropped in the rankings. Trump's they put Jimmy Carter at 22. I mean, he's nowhere near as good as Biden. I mean, see that's the thing that you don't realize, Kev, is we are living in privileged times. We have one of the greatest presidents ever reigning over us right now,
can
and
tell.
you just don't appreciate it. Yeah,
Sharp as a tack.
have his picture hanging.
Yeah. So he's so intelligent. He will definitely never ever do a debate with Donald Trump.
Oh
no, wouldn't even,
no.
and he wouldn't do a debate with Donald Trump when he even had 50% of his brain left. Now he has about 5.
He wouldn't. Actually,
so, no.
Bobby Kennedy Jr. just over the weekend challenged Biden to a debate, and he said, "I want it just me, RFK, and Biden." And he was great. He said, "He goes, I doubt his cognitive abilities. I'd like to see him debate me one-on-one, and I'd like to ask him who really is running the country." Now, this is Bobby Kennedy Jr. Interesting, and this is again interesting coming from a Democrat, and I think I don't know if he's on Trump's short list of VPs. I think rumors kind of quelled on that a little bit, but I don't know. I would. A lot of his policies are atrocious. A lot of his policies are gravely immoral, but I think he brings up a lot of interesting points too.
I would love to see
a little bit more
him, Trump, and Nikki Haley debate. Oh, come on.
Mm.
That would be amazing. Because he's sharp and he's a guy, as you said, some of his policies are terrible, but boy, you get him going on vaccines or the environment or pharmaceuticals and stuff.
He's very
he's done decades of research. I mean, he is really well versed. I mean, really, really, really smart, and he could give Trump a really hard time on some topics. There are a few people who I think could go toe to toe with Trump. I mean, Nikki Haley obviously isn't one of them. But Kennedy would be really interesting on the same stage. I would love to see that because I think
I would like to watch too.
They would both, say good and bad things in it would be nice to watch. It's actually, boy, I know we're all over the place, but it's an interesting topic. I just saw right before we came on the show that Trump was touting, saying that if he becomes president, that he would I don't know, give more money for the ability to get an IVF. Yeah, IVF.
Yes. In vitro fertilization.
In vitro fertilization. Yes. So which
they're calling it pro-life.
Right, exactly. Which we know is definitely immoral
moral evil.
And it's evil. You definitely cannot do that. You cannot support that. And it just shows you that either Trump just truly doesn't have a clue, which is definitely possible. It's not like he's a Catholic, or Trump understands that he needs the pro-life vote. He just doesn't quite understand what that actually means. I think that's definitely possible. So he's just
I think there's a chance that he
saying
doesn't
stuff sometimes. He's just
know
like,
what
yeah,
he
I'm
doesn't know what he means.
pro-life. I'm pro-life. Totally I'm pro-life. Give me your
I
vote,
was
guys.
thinking, has any candidate ever stood on the stage and they argue, in terms of abortion, they argue 20 weeks and life of the mother and rape and incest and partial birth and the 9 months and 6, they come up with all these stipulations. Has anyone ever stood on the debate stage and actually said it's a mortal sin?
Huh.
Has anyone ever said that?
I
Like they
doubt it.
talk about all these things, but
Maybe Alan Keyes.
he might have,
He might
he
have.
might have,
Yeah,
and he
I
would,
don't
and
know.
he would too. He would, but I
He's a
think
Catholic.
we don't. Yes, but I think in a lot of ways we don't say that anymore at all on the national level. We might call things, they soften it so much. Like you need to talking about, how we kind of open the show with how would you govern. I think we need to bring back that awareness as a culture and a society of sin and virtue. We need to call it what it is. It's abortion is an unspeakable crime, but it's a mortal sin. And somebody should stand up there and say it, and you won't hear it. You won't hear any of them say it.
Well, let's say, again, if you have that chance to govern, you obviously make abortion illegal. So then the next question is, what is your penalty for those who commit it? Because I think that's an interesting question. Like we're looking at again, like this guy in El Salvador, he just rounds them all up and says, okay, you're all going to prison. I think some of them for a long time. So he's just making it clear, like, hey, you go be a dangerous criminal, you're done. It happens. It's just done because people won't do it because it's too dangerous to do it. They don't.
It's
They
kind
can't
of
risk their lives.
remember how
Sometimes you have to be pretty brutal.
remember how we talked about the whipping post
Yeah.
that was found locally.
Some people didn't like that. Some people did not like that podcast.
Oh well, we talked about it.
Our Susans from the parish council didn't.
Oh,
but no, you're exactly right though. I totally, and I think you have to have. I'm a big fan of corporal punishment, and I'm not necessarily saying the death penalty because I think, as we also talked about, I think in that podcast that it's a dangerous thing because our judicial system's so bad. We certainly
going to kill the wrong guy.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to send innocent people to death. So yeah, I mean, in principle, the church is definitely pro death penalty. But yeah, I think you got to be very careful with it. But I am pro, Matt. I am pro. I mean, you look what's what happened. I think who was it that started? I think Obama was the one who really started the whole thing. Or no, it was way before Obama. If you get an ounce of weed and you go to prison for 10 years, so I forget there's even a name for it. But anyway, I think it was back in the 80s even. So it may have been Reagan again. So anyway, so you get with an ounce of weed and you get sent to prison for years. And so you have these guys who are just it's just what happens because you're getting penalized for something way too strong. Matt, I'm telling you, bring back the stocks, bring back the whipping post. I mean, these are things that are it hurts. It's a temporary punishment. It's humiliating, but then it's done. You're not ruining somebody's life. You're going to shame them. You're going to make them hurt, but you're not putting them in prison for 10 years for an ounce of weed. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, the whole prison system is so corrupt. Bring back the whipping post because people hear that and they think that's brutal. That's barbaric. And yeah, in some ways, yes, but also in other ways, not nearly as barbaric as our prison system. Not even close.
Right. It's just that everything, like you were saying, it's just that the people who would make the decisions would make all of the wrong decisions, and that it would be. I mean, this was. Do you remember Obama wanting to sue all these religious sisters and whatnot for failing to comply with paying for abortions? Remember that? I mean, these were the things they would. If people had their way, they would be sent to death row for all that, refusing to comply, like you're not paying for people's abortion. So the amount of trust that I have in our government, or really any government that I could think of off the top of my head, to virtuously conduct the death penalty is probably quite low. They would get it all inversed, but I mean, I think that's a very strong point. Is like, what are we doing when somebody's making a small crime like that, and then they're facing these lengthy charges where all they really need is a bit more of a slap on the hand in a lot of ways too, a little bit more than that, but a little bit more of immediate punishment. Like some of the charges are just ridiculous, and the amount of time paired with them is completely uncalled for. And then it goes in an opposite direction as well. But there's just a lot to say about that, and I think. We need to consider again the commandments of God should govern the country, and they should do so through the authority of the church, which is, why a lot of these things like communism and whatnot are condemned by the church, is because they make the state the godhead, which is the state should just reflect the church. The state should just reflect God's law, not be the supreme and powerful authority, but reflect. And that's what made Catholic France and King St. Louis IX so great, is they were supreme in a lot of their authority, but they did so as a reflection of God and as of the church. And that was the proper order to government. And it's just like, man, I don't see it coming back in any way, shape, or form. And you have these guys, people make such a, I've not to go down a rabbit hole here, but people really like, they put Napoleon on a pedestal and whatnot. Napoleon, do people forget that he threw popes in prison and he sought to overthrow the power of the church in here? I mean, he did a lot of great things in the eyes of the world, I guess you can say, but he was an enemy, in my opinion, and he was an enemy of the church, an enemy of God.
You still see markings of it here in Germany from Napoleon.
Sure, and he threw the immoral principles of the French Revolution into all of Europe. And it was actually Bishop Sanborn who said that John Paul II was the Napoleon of the church. He brought all of those revolutionary principles through Vatican II into the church. So what Napoleon did to the governing world, John Paul II did to the church. So that was a very nice parallel of the two. But anyway, on that note,
interesting. Well, I got one last question for you. We can do this in just a couple of minutes. I mean, why do you think Nikki Haley's still in the race?
That's a great question. The only thing that she keeps getting pummeled, and she was on an interview the other day, Harris Faulkner of I forget what, maybe Newsmax or one of those networks, and she said, how do you win your first state? And Nikki Haley said, it's amazing that you're saying that. I haven't won a state yet. And then Harris Faulkner says, no, that's not amazing. Like, the only possible thing in my mind is now she outraised Trump. She raised 23 million. He raised 19 million. She's outperforming Trump financially. The thing is, though, is she's got these big donors. The only thing that I could think of is she is truly hoping that something happens to him. There's no other reason. She's got Michigan is next. I don't know the data of Michigan. Trump is up, according to Real Clear Politics, by 60 points on an average over 60. It was 78 to 28. Or something along those lines, or to 18 or whatever, however the math would work out. And then it gets worse. She's down by almost 80 in Oklahoma. It was like 67 in California, 66 in New York. I mean, talk about poor judgment. Like, and these people are funneling money into her campaign. Who and why and when? The only thing in my mind is that she is banking on him somehow, some way. He's out, and she's the last one standing. And she's a rhino. She's a war hawk. I don't know if it becomes Nikki Haley and Joe Biden.
Joe Biden can't. There's no way he can't. I mean, they just said
do it.
I think he actually can't. Like, they just said that he can't be thrown in prison, or he can't be put on trial because he's not mentally ill. He can't run as president. I actually wonder. So Nikki Haley's hoping that Trump is put in prison or whatever. I wonder if she's going to run unopposed. If he gets thrown in prison and she's just a candidate, and the Democrats they're just, hey, we're happy enough.
They just handed to her.
One of us kind of ish. Not our favorite, but we'll take her for 4 years and we'll come back strong and with maybe Ocasio-Cortez or whoever in 4 years from now. And
because
could be.
She's
not
not
have a candidate. The Democrats don't have a candidate.
They have nobody. They talked about potential. No. They talked about potential replacements for him, for Biden, and not only are they no names. Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, is it maybe?
No way.
Trump pounds these people in electoral map wise. There's just nobody. I think she would be, if she was actually president. I think she would be. I do think she's a war hawk, so I do think she would start unnecessary trouble. But I overall, I think she'd probably be pretty neutral. I don't think you wouldn't know she's there. I don't think you would just be.
But I think that's what they would. That's what I think they could just be okay with it. Just okay, it's not a win, but it's not Trump.
It's not a conservative president.
She's gonna be a pretty lame duck president. Just even whatever goes on in the in the Senate.
She's going to make a moderate Supreme Court appointment if need be.
Exactly.
It's just nothing that's going to, nothing.
I think that could be what everyone's hoping for. Because again, Biden is not a candidate. He can't. I mean, I'm not just saying that. Hopefully, he can't be. I hope he is. I hope he's a candidate because he should be put on trial. And he has no brain. So
even moral issues. I mean, there's words that Trump wanted to institute in a second term a 16-week abortion federal ban, and Nikki Haley has said we don't have the votes to do that. We're not going to do that. So yeah, I think they see her as just a safe kind of just get past 4 years and nothing's going to go wrong. And
I can see it, Matt. I can see it. Well, I guess we will see.
Maybe
it's going to be an interesting year, and as everyone knows, we'll be right here to tell you.
We're right here for it.
We are the experts when it comes.
We got eyes on everything.
Everything, yeah, exactly.
we have our monitors up, Kev, with all of the all of the news stations. For
breaking news, stay tuned next week. Matt and Kevin, Monday morning. All right, guys, we appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on with us. It's been meandering, but it was fun. I always enjoy these shows where we have absolutely no prep because they always take interesting turns. So, I had fun. Matt, I hope you did too. And everyone else, please, if you have any comments, let us know. Put them in the comment section, like, share, all that stuff. Email me if you have anything nice to say. Email Matt if you don't. Kind of sick of the negative reviews from you guys. So.
I got to say, I'm really bad at replying to emails. I apologize. I do get some.
True.
Either I don't reply them or I take a long time just to get back. I should work on that.
Until next Monday, God bless. Hopefully it's a quick but beneficial week of Lent. We'll see you next Monday. God bless.
Make the world Catholic again.